Jalen Warley looks like the favorite to be Gonzaga's backup point guard this upcoming season, and at 6'7", he might be the biggest one that Mark Few has ever had.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, folks, a couple different things to get to today. Gonzaga has not had many hoopers from the state of Idaho, but that is the next state in our series discussing the best players from Gonzaga over the past 25 years from various different states. We'll talk about those couple of Idahoans in the final segment. Also, the Zags women's basketball non-conference schedule is out. We're going to talk about the teams Coach Lisa Fortier's team will be playing this year, as well as another piece of hardware for Yvonne Ejim and what that means for her. But first, we have a couple of non-update updates about Gonzaga's backcourt in particular, and I wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about something that I've mentioned a handful of times on the show, that I've posted on the YouTube community tab for some polls and have various discussions about, but that I kind of want to dig into a little bit more here, which is the idea that Gonzaga's backup point guard this upcoming season might be one of the bigger players on the roster in Jalen Warley. As for the non-update updates, the first one, we still don't have an update on Mario Saint-Superi's ankle. Recording this right now on Wednesday early afternoon, so it's possible we have an update since then. But as of right now, we do not know the status for Mario Saint-Superi. For those of you who missed this, Saint-Superi is currently with the Spanish senior men's national team competing in the Eurobasket event overseas right now. He's been with them for a few weeks. He was actually added to the roster as an injury replacement himself. And while the actual event has yet to start, I think the first games, official games start on August 28th. There was an international friendly and exhibition game between Spain and France last weekend. And in the first quarter of that event, Mario Saint-Superi went down and grabbed his right ankle. It was kind of hard to tell based on the video what happened. You didn't really see his ankle move or anything like that, but it was clear that he was carried off the court without putting any weight on said ankle. There was a quote from the coach afterwards that said it's a bit of a complicated injury, which doesn't, and it was a translated article, so I just don't really know exactly the context for that quote in particular, but assuming a sprain for Saint-Superi, it would likely take him out for 6 to 8 weeks, which would, the season doesn't start for 11 weeks from the time of Saint-Superi's injury. So in theory, he might be ready to be back on the floor for Gonzaga. And I think that's the most likely outcome without having heard a firm update at this point. Obviously, there are scenarios where it is a more significant injury. There are scenarios where it is not as significant of an injury. But what we do know, regardless of any of that, is that Mario Saint-Superi will have spent very little time in Spokane with his teammates, with his coaching staff. And the other things we know are that Mario Saint-Superi primarily played an off-ball role last year in the professional ranks, and that Mark Few has indicated that he believes Mario could play both on and off the ball in Gonzaga's system. All of that leads me to believe that the most likely scenario for Saint-Superi, regardless of his health, is that he spends the majority of his freshman season playing a off-ball role, which will be easier for him to adjust to, which will just not complicate things for a new player coming to a new country, learning new customs, new system, new teammates, new language, all of the things that come into being an international freshman. Why overcomplicate the basketball lessons early on? Have him spend a lot of time in practices and next offseason working on learning the ins and outs of playing the point guard role at Gonzaga, the pick and roll, the various things that come with that specific role, but have him adjust in his first year by primarily playing off the ball, which he's already comfortable doing. The other non-update update is that as of, again, this recording, we still have not heard anything about Tyon Grant Foster's request for a waiver from the NCAA to get another year of eligibility, which he would spend at Gonzaga. The Grand Canyon transfer played heavily with the ball in his hands at Grand Canyon each of the last 2 years. He didn't come to Gonzaga to play point guard, but I think that in a scenario where Grant Foster's been with the team since he committed to them in the transfer portal, where this waiver situation just did not exist, and this Mario Saint-Superi injury happened, I think that the Zags would be preparing Grant Foster to take on a big role as the team's backup point guard, secondary ball handler outside of Braden Smith. But the fact that Grant Foster is going to suffer from the same challenges that Mario Saint-Superi is suffering from, of not being around his teammates, not being around his coaching staff, not getting an opportunity to learn what the ins and outs of the point guard position at Gonzaga fully entail, I think that makes it difficult to project Grant Foster is able to play that backup point guard role, assuming he's even able to play at all for Gonzaga, which as of this recording, we just don't know what that's going to look like. All that to say, the almost certain outcome, barring Mark Few deciding to give Saint-Superi a huge crash course on being the backup point guard, is that Gonzaga's backup point guard minutes will be played by 6'7" Florida State / Virginia transfer wing Jalen Warley. And I say wing for Jalen Warley, but he lists himself as a point guard. You watch his Instagram account. There was a video recently posted by a videographer that was filming him doing workouts, and they said 6'7" point guard. Like, that's what they listed him as. And if you watched any tape, if you watched him play at Florida State, he handled the ball a lot. Like, that was a huge part of his role. Now, his numbers do not jump off the page as a passer necessarily, but I think a lot of that stems from two facts about Florida State. One, they played at a very slow pace. Slower pace means fewer possessions. Fewer possessions means fewer points scored. Fewer points scored means fewer assists. None of this is very complicated, but it is a fact, and it is part of the reason that players who transfer to Gonzaga often see their scoring bump or their assist numbers bump or even their rebounders numbers bump. And it's not because they necessarily got dramatically better, although in a lot of cases that's true. It's mostly that they're playing in a system where there are more rebounds, there are more assists, there are more points, there are more shots, just by virtue of the style that Gonzaga plays at. So I think a lot of that's true for Jalen Warley. It's also true that Florida State ran 9 or 10 deep pretty consistently under Coach Leonard Hamilton, to the point where Warley never played more than 28 minutes per game. He's not going to play that at Gonzaga, but I think that's a relevant factor when evaluating his assist numbers. And also, his assist numbers just are not that bad. As a true freshman in under 20 minutes per game, Warley averaged 2.5 assists and 1.3 turnovers. As a sophomore in a career-high 28 minutes per game, Warley averaged 3.3 assists and just 1.6 turnovers. And then as a junior, his final season, he averaged 2.8 assists in 24 minutes per game and 1.1 turnovers. I highlight the turnovers because in every single season that Jalen Warley played for Florida State, he averaged twice as many assists as turnovers. The only time it was close was 2.5 assists compared to 1.3 turnovers. Technically not quite twice as many, but he was twice as many his junior year, and he was twice as many his sophomore year as well. And again, using some kind of advanced numbers on Warley's stats, he averaged about 5 assists per 40 minutes, all 3 of those years. He averaged 7.5 assists per 100 possessions as a freshman, and then 6.8 and 6.4 his other 2 years. And his assist rate was pretty steadily just over 20%. As a freshman, it was just under 23%. As a sophomore, it was about 22%. And then as a junior, it was about 20%. Those are good quality numbers for a point guard. They're not elite. Don't compare them to Ryan Nembhard and feel like that justifies saying Jalen Warley shouldn't play point guard, because they're not going to compare favorably to Ryan Nembhard. They don't quite compare up to Braden Smith's sophomore season at Colgate, although some of Jalen Warley's passing numbers look pretty similar to what Braden Smith put up as a freshman at Colgate. But beyond that, just looking at the data doesn't really give you the full picture, because, again, the system is so different, and what Gonzaga is going to want Jalen Warley to do in Spokane is very different. And I think there's a lot that could go really well with Jalen Warley playing point guard. And again, it's not like he's going to play point guard 25 minutes a night. He's probably not even going to play 25 minutes a night, frankly. And Braden Smith averaged about 31 minutes per game his 2 years at Colgate. I see no reason why he's not going to play 32, 33 minutes per game this year, barring, obviously, conditioning issues or anything like that, which I don't think is going to happen. I think that Braden Smith plays 32, 33 minutes a game. So you're really just looking at 5 or 6 minutes per game without Braden Smith on the floor. Maybe Mario can take a few of those, but I think that Warley does kind of handle a lot of those minutes and a lot of those reps. And what Jalen Warley offers at the point guard position, assuming he gets familiar and comfortable navigating the pick and roll and being able to make reads and knowing when to dump that pass off to a cutting Graham Ike or a pop in Braden Huff, whatever it may be, assuming he can do that, which I don't have any reason to believe he can't, I think that's a huge weapon. And if he's getting downhill, if he's getting screen set for him and he gets a step on a 6'2" guard in the WCC, he's getting to the cup. He's scoring through contact. He's getting to the free throw line. Like his size, his length, his physicality makes him an absolute monster in the WCC, where they don't have 6'7" point guards. There's not a lot of teams in college basketball that have guards that big, but the WCC, like most teams, don't even have any guards that big. Never mind their point guard. And so Warley's going to have a huge advantage size-wise against WCC guards when he's playing the point guard. The issue is pretty simple. Jalen Warley is not a three-point shooter. And I mean, not even close to being a three-point shooter. In his junior year, when he played 33 games and played 24 minutes a night, he was on the floor a whole bunch. And Jalen Warley took 7 threes. That's it. That's it. He made one. He made 1 3 as a junior. For his career, he's made 23s. And that's in 3 years, about 29% from 3. So he's not a great three-point shooter by a percentage, but he's also just not a three-point shooter. He just doesn't take them. So any team in college basketball is going to see that, and they're just going to go under on those screens. They're going to go under and under and under and under and force Jalen Warley to beat them with the outside shot. I don't think he's going to shoot a lot of them. So what happens then? Do you abandon the pick and roll? Do you do what Gonzaga did Ryan Nembhard's first year at Gonzaga when they started running the pick and roll from the free throw line as opposed to the three-point line, where if teams went under, Nembhard was just taking that 15-footer. The reason they were able to do that is because Nembhard could thread passes the way very few point guards have ever been able to do. I don't think Jalen Warley is that gifted of a passer. And I think a 6'7" point guard and a 6'10" big man setting screens for each other at the free throw line is just going to clog things up way too much. So I'm very interested to see how the Jalen Warley point guard experiment goes, assuming this is the route that Gonzaga takes, because he has the skill set, he has the experience, he has the talent to be incredibly effective in this role in certain specific contexts, but there are other areas where he lacks in a way that I think could be problematic for the Zags. However, I just don't think they have any other good options. Again, we already talked about Saint Superi and Tyon Grant Foster, who are both as good, if not better options than Warley, assuming they are able to play and get their waivers or get their injuries taken care of. But if not, the options outside of that are pretty bleak. You might be thinking, well, Andy, what about Adam Miller? He's the other transfer. He's 6'3". He looks more like a point guard. Adam Miller's not a point guard, folks. He's just not. He's just not. His career high in assists per game across 4 seasons is 1.9. His career high assist rate is 12.4. Again, Jalen Warley was never under 20. Adam Miller is not a passer. That's not what he's on this team to do. That's not what Mark Few recruited him to do. They're just not going to ask him to do that. Could he do it in a pinch? Sure, in the same way that Hunter Salas was the point guard in a pinch for Gonzaga a few years ago, where he just brought the ball up the court and pretty much just got them into a motion offense. There weren't screens, there weren't pick and rolls, there wasn't facilitation happening. Yeah, he could do that, but that's kind of the extent of it. Outside of that, Emmanuel Innocente, pretty similar. Not somebody who makes reads or facilitates, just could bring the ball up the court and capably not turn it over. Steele Venters, it's not his role at all. Davis Fogel, true freshman. Yeah, he played some point guard in high school, but the idea of Gonzaga asking Davis Fogel to play point guard as a true freshman feels very far-fetched to me. So this is a team that is going to need to rely on Jalen Warley to fill that role. And I'm not sure if it was always the plan all along, but it certainly looks like it's going to be the plan now. And I think he's more than capable of doing it, but there are going to be some wrinkles that this staff's going to have to figure out to mitigate his lack of three-point shooting. Switching gears, folks, Coach Lisa Fortier and the Zag women's team, they're not afraid to play anybody at any time, anywhere, even with a very new look roster. We're going to talk about this team's non-conference schedule, what it means for this program coming up here in just a second. But first, guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options have not worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Rugiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. So head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege. And you'll get 15% off today. That's Rugiet, RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege. Use promo code lockedoncollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Moving away from our conversation about Gonzaga's backup point guard role, which we now expect to go to 6'7" senior transfer Jalen Warley, to instead talk about the women's basketball non-conference schedule, which was revealed, I think, late last week is when this came out. Haven't had a chance to talk about it yet on the show, but some really competitive games for Coach Lisa Fortier's team. And again, this is a roster that is replacing or needing to replace 4 graduated seniors. Chief among them, superstar Yvonne Ejim, who's out the door after setting Gonzaga's all-time scoring record. She's the women's basketball program leader in points, field goals, rebounds, won basically every award you can possibly win in a 5-year career. You replace her, you replace her counterpart in the front court, Maud Hybens. You also lose Esther Little. You also lose Taylor Dalton. You lose Bree Allen-Bien and Claire O'Connor. Like, this is a team that's going to look very, very different this upcoming season. And yet that did not stop Coach Fortier from scheduling a bunch of road games, a bunch of challenging games right out of the chute. They're opening things up at the McCarthy Athletic Center in an exhibition game on November 2nd against Carroll College. But then their first 2 games of the season are on the road, first at North Dakota State on November 7th, and then 2 days later at Toledo on November 9th. Their first true home game of the year is a fun one, November 13th against Colorado State. A little bit of a preview there for Gonzaga's move to the Pac-12, where Colorado State will be joining them. 3 days later, they then host Stanford, mighty Stanford in the ACC. That's been an ongoing game between Gonzaga and Stanford for quite a while now, so good to see that back on the calendar. Then on November 20th, they take on South Dakota State, and this is a neutral site game, although it is at the Sanford Pentagon, which is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so a neutral that is certainly not neutral in the sense that it is a heck of a lot closer to SDSU's campus than Gonzaga's. After that, they'll host Eastern Washington on November 23rd, and then they'll go take off for their Feast Week event, the Gulf Coast Showcase down in Florida, where they open up November 28th against Indiana in the Big Ten. And then in their second game on the 30th, they will take on either Iowa State or Marquette, depending on how that first game goes. After that, we get into December, and Gonzaga will have 3 straight home games against quality opponents. First, Grand Canyon on December 4th, followed by UC Davis on December 6th. Then a long gap period for finals week before they host Big 12 foe Arizona State on December 16th. Zags then close out the non-conference slate with a pair of road games, December 19th at Missouri State, and then December 21st at UC Riverside. Come home, celebrate Christmas with their families, and then get into conference play late in December after that. Again, like we said, a quality non-conference schedule for Coach Fortier and the Zags. 4 Power 4 opponents, and only one of them is at home. That's, of course, the Stanford game. They take on Arizona State in a true road game, and then they have those 2 Power Conference opponents between Indiana and then either Iowa State or Marquette down in Florida. And then some really good mid-major teams as well. And I think it's worth remembering, like, for me, and I'm sure for many of the rest of you, like, you're hearing the teams based on like how they perform on the men's side. And like, there are some really good mid-major teams that Gonzaga's playing this year that are not traditionally good in men's basketball. Chief among them, the 2 Dakota schools. South Dakota State, 4 years in a row, has won 27 or more games. Coach Aaron Johnson's one of the absolute best in the business, and Gonzaga is going to take on this ridiculously talented mid-major program again in Sioux Falls. That's a very, very tough game against the Jackrabbits. Meanwhile, North Dakota State is no slouch either. They've gone 24-8 the last 2 seasons in the Summit League. They have been very, very good. And Grand Canyon, who has moved officially to the Mountain West a year early, they went 32-3 last year. Now, their coach is gone. Molly Miller was their coach last year. She's out the door. So you're thinking, okay, well, Grand Canyon's probably not going to replicate that success with a new head coach. And you may be right. But here's the thing. Molly Miller took the head coach job at Arizona State. So if she's legit, which leading a team like Grand Canyon to a 32-3 record, probably pretty legit, then I suspect that Arizona State's going to be a problem for Gonzaga as well. Lots to like in this schedule. I love 4 true road games against mid-major schools. Like they're only playing one of the 4 Power 4 teams at home, but they're also only playing one of them truly on the road, and that's Arizona State. Meanwhile, they've got true road games at North Dakota State, at Toledo, at Missouri State, and at UC Riverside. I love seeing those true road games for this team because so often you only see teams be willing to play true road games against like super marquee programs. And while these are solid mid-major teams, it's nice to see Gonzaga be willing to go play and challenge themselves with these tough road contests. And like we mentioned, it's also cool for Gonzaga to get a chance to play Colorado State in a non-conference game because next year that'll start being a conference game. And of course, Gonzaga will also play both Washington State and Oregon State in conference play as they finalize their time in the WCC this year. The main question for Coach Fortier's team is who's going to step up outside of Allie Turner, because Allie Turner was outstanding last year as a true freshman. Set Gonzaga's record for three-pointers made in a season, made over 103, shot 44% from distance, was a prolific scorer, distributor, and outside shooter. She's going to be great as a sophomore. There's no debate about that, but who's going to step up with her? Is it going to be redshirt Lauren Whitaker, who is a 6'3" forward from New Zealand, who's been touted as one of the next great Gonzaga bigs, but has been on the shelf for about a year and a half since coming to campus? Is it going to be one of the transfers? Zia Kuso coming over from St. Mary's, following in the footsteps of Taylor Dalton. Taylor Smith transferred from Utah Valley. And then Sierra Lichty transferred from Cal Poly. Is one of them going to step up, take on a bigger role, be ready to kind of contribute right away as a freshman coming in, as a transfer coming into this program? That's the big question for Coach Fortier's team. Fortunately, Lisa prepared this team by putting together a tough non-conference schedule right away. Want to also mention quickly before we move on, Yvonne Ejim got herself a gold medal at the GLOBL JAM Games this year, August 13th through 17th in Toronto. It's a U23 event with various countries representing. For the United States teams for both the men's and women's side were represented by current college programs. On the women's side, it was the University of Texas women's basketball team. On the men's side, it was the Georgetown men's basketball team. On the women's side for Canada, Yvonne was a team captain for this group. They played that Texas team in group play and lost. And Yvonne was awesome in that game. She had 15 points, 10 rebounds, I think only missed like 2 shots, was just absolutely excellent in a game that they ultimately lost. They rematched up with them in the championship game, and this time Canada got the best of them, won 72-65 to bring home the gold medal. Yvonne was not nearly as effective in the championship game. Texas clearly adjusted their game plan and just hounded her. She was 1 of 7 from the field, finished with just 6 points, but she did have 7 boards and 4 assists in that game. And again, what matters to her is not going to be the stat sheet. What matters to her is that she was the team captain for a Canadian team that won a gold medal at the GLOBL JAM Games. That's an incredibly cool accomplishment for her. It's clear she is such a big part of Canada basketball's current, present, and future. She was already on the Olympic team that was in Paris for the 2024 Olympic Games last year, one of the youngest players on that roster. Now she's captaining a U23 team in an event like this. It's very cool to see her not only have this success outside of her Gonzaga career, but put herself in a position to be a face of Canada basketball going forward. Well, folks, switching gears one more time, despite campus being just 15 minutes away from the Idaho border, Gonzaga has just not had many Idaho hoopers in the Mark Few era. We're going to talk about that. We're going to also rank the 3 that we do have to talk about coming up in a second to close out the show. But first, folks, if you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You probably moved on. That's why you need Open Phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Open Phone solved that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this questions. And the AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Folks, PrizePicks is the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up and college football is not far behind. So whether you've got your eye on big name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the game. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. I've actually been using PrizePicks for a few years now, and I just love how simple it is. I can literally lock in my picks while my coffee's brewing. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all of your withdrawals are fast, easy, and secure. And PrizePicks already has some lines, some over-unders for college football season, including Arch Manning, the Texas quarterback, for next Saturday's huge matchup against Ohio State. Arch Manning is set at 1.5 passing touchdowns. If you think he's going to throw 2 tutties or more against the Buckeyes, then join me, because that's what I'm throwing my money down on. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We're closing out the show, continuing a series that we started late July, early August, looking at the best players in the Mark Few era of Gonzaga basketball to come from various states. We did our top 10 players from the state of Oregon a few weeks ago. That was a really fun one to compare Blake Stepp and Matt Santangelo and Kyle Wilcher and guys like Silas Melson and Ben Gregg and Mike Hart. Like, it was a lot of fun to kind of take a look at that group. And then we did Colorado as well. Only 4 players from Colorado, but a couple of really excellent ones, including Matt Bolden and Josh Perkins, and of course, current Zag Graham Ike as well. And now we're taking a look at the state of Idaho. And I thought, going into my research, that there would be more players from Idaho. I know that the state of Idaho is not exactly producing high quality basketball talent. There's not as many high schools there. There's not as much infrastructure there. It's just not a super populated state. But I was surprised, especially early in Mark Few's tenure. I thought there would have been a few more kind of Idaho-based Zags who might have come over from Coeur d'Alene or Boise, who made a big impact on this program. And I should say that the way I do this research is using Sports Reference or basketballreference.com, and the rosters each year show the birthplace or show the high school area. It's obviously not always going to catch everybody. It's going to catch guys who maybe transferred their senior year of high school to a different place, something like that. Like, I haven't looked at where Isaiah Harwell is listed as, but it's possible Harwell is listed as being from Utah when in fact he actually is from Idaho. But I do bring up Isaiah Harwell because Gonzaga's attempted to pursue some players from Idaho in the past. Isaiah Harwell would very easily be one of the best had he chosen to come to Gonzaga, but after a 2+ year recruitment from the Zags, the Pocatello, Idaho native decided to go play for Houston, where he will be an incoming freshman this upcoming season. Outside of that, Blake Buchanan from Coeur d'Alene ended up going to Virginia instead of coming to Gonzaga, spent a few years with the Cavs, and has actually transferred to Iowa State for this upcoming season. So there's been some good talent out of Idaho the last couple of years that Gonzaga hasn't quite been able to get their hands on. But going through again the Mark Few era of Gonzaga basketball, I found 3 players from the state of Idaho who have suited up for the Zags. And we're going to talk about them here in order, in my order of best to least best of these 3 players. Would love to hear your thoughts on this, or if you think there's somebody missing who you do think is from Idaho, let me know. We may be able to talk about that on a future show. Number 1, this was a pretty easy list to put together. There's 3 of them, and I think it's pretty clear what 1, 2, and 3 should be. Number 1 is Cory Violette. Cory Violette was one of the first true stars for Gonzaga basketball in the Mark Few era. He was from Boise. He started Gonzaga from 2000 until 2004, 129 games played for the Zags, started 89 of them, finished his career averaging 10.5 points and about 7 rebounds per game. He was 3-time All-WCC. He was also 2-time All-WCC tournament team. He led the conference in rebounds per game, and field goal percentage his senior year, 2003-2004. He is also second in Gonzaga basketball history in offensive rebounds behind the great Drew Timme. Drew Timme had 292 offensive boards. Violette had 286, so very close there. And that also puts Violette 18th in conference history in offensive rebounds. He's also fourth in Gonzaga basketball history in defensive rebounds and defensive win shares, was a prolific low post stalwart for 4 years early in Mark Few's tenure, and absolutely a player who deserves to be crowned the best Gonzaga player from Idaho, at least in the Mark Few era. Number 2 is the most memorable one for me just because of the timing of when he was at Gonzaga, overlapping with my time in Spokane as well. That would be Kyle Dranginis from Nampa, Idaho. Dranginis was at Gonzaga from 2012 through 2016, played in 143 games in a Gonzaga uniform, started 35 of them, most coming his senior year, kind of did that development stage of being a backup, steadily more playing time, blossoming into a starter as a senior. All told, Dranginis averaged about 5 points, 3 boards, and 2 assists per game, but he was a very efficient scorer. Across 4 years at Gonzaga, Dranginis shot just about 57% on 2-pointers and a little over 35.5% from 3. So he didn't score a lot, didn't take a lot of shots, but he was effective with the times that he did take shots offensively. He led the WCC in games played twice. He's tied for 4th in Gonzaga history in games played, tied with Silas Melson, who is a very similar player in a lot of ways as somebody who, was a backup for 3 years and then blossomed into a starter as a senior. Dranginis was a very good defensive player. He's 7th in Gonzaga history in defensive box plus minus. Really just ended up being kind of a versatile do-it-all wing who again, started out being a deep bench player, kind of carved his way into the role just by being a hustle guy who took care of the basketball, took the right shots, played hard on defense, and then ended up getting a chance to be a full-time starter for this program where he really kind of showed why he was such a valuable glue guy for this team the last few years. And then third on the list here is a much more recent Zag, and that would be walk-on Noah Holland. Noah Holland spent his first season last year with Gonzaga. He only played in 3 games, again, was a walk-on, just 9 minutes total, 0 of 1 from the field, had 3 rebounds and a pair of fouls. Those are the only stats recorded for Holland up to this point. Again, he was a walk-on who came over from Allen Hancock Junior College. He's also a legacy. Both his parents played at Gonzaga. I believe his mother was a volleyball player and his dad was a basketball player. I think either way, they were both student athletes at Gonzaga. Holland grew up in Rathdrum, Idaho, went to Allen Hancock Junior College, was effective there, and decided to walk on to Gonzaga's program where he was last year. 6'9" big, got long blonde hair, fun looking guy. Like, I'm excited to see if he gets a little bit more opportunity this year as a walk-on. Again, with Joe Fuse out the door, Graydon Lemke's out the door, like maybe there's some more room for some walk-ons to step into bigger roles this upcoming season. So we'll see if Holland gets a chance to add to those very minimal numbers that he's had in his career up to this point. But he's not going to do enough to pass Dranginis, so he's going to sit in this spot as the 3rd best player from the state of Idaho. Again, unless you know of somebody that I'm missing that played for Mark Few, that's from Idaho, that didn't make this list. If you do, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Reach out to me, Discord, social media, whatever. Again, I think there's a chance that there's some players here who maybe spent some time in Idaho growing up who are not on this list, but that we want to talk about. And we'll do more of these. We'll talk Washington. We'll probably break up Washington into east side and west side of the state. We'll do some other countries. We'll do Canada. We'll do some European looks, and we'll do, Texas. And we'll come up. California will come up. Maybe Arizona. I'm sure there's some other states that will have enough guys. Minnesota is going to be a real fun one because I can think of 4 right off the top of my head, and all of them were very good players at Gonzaga. So that's going to be a fun one to look at as well. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate every single one of you. It's going to wrap it up for today and for this week here on Locked On Zags. Have a fantastic rest of your week and weekend. And until next time, as always, go Zags.